When war calls, we all ought to answer. Would that it were not this way, but for our people to survive, we must all tread the darkest of paths. Yet I regret that many of our kin have grown to see such obligations not as a duty, but a joy. I do not love the blade for its form or its keen edge, but only for that which it defends. Must we pay for existence with our very souls? From the introspections upon perfection, from Kisaduras, the anchorite. The ancient history of the Eldari stretches back over the millennia to a time when they dominated the stars completely. Yet, for all their splendor and might, they brought a terrible curse upon themselves that sundered their empire forever, leaving the ravaged fragments of their race teetering on the brink of annihilation. The star-faring history of the Eldari is long and encompasses glories and sorrows alike. When the Empire was at its height, their homeworlds were paradises, their powers godlike, and their armies unsurpassed. As the Terran centuries slid past, their status as lords of the galaxy bred an arrogance that led to a cataclysm. A proportion of their race survived that dark time by fleeing from disaster upon the great vessels known as the craftworlds. Others settled verdant planets far from the heart of their empire, and still more hid in private realms of their own making. Yet there was no real escape from what was to come. Apparent perfection, like that of the ancient Eldari, is all too often blighted by pride. Over 1 million Terran years ago, they alone ruled the stars as the undisputed masters of their own destiny. Such a position was their right, they thought, and their preeminence was beyond doubt. In many ways, the Eldari had good reason for such hubris, for no other race had posed a serious threat to their wealth and stability for time immemorial. They were convinced that they no longer had anything to fear from the galaxy at large. And they may have been right, but the true threat came from within. The doom of the Eldari, when it came, took a form far more subtle and dangerous than that of an alien invasion. At their peak, nothing was beyond their reach, and nothing was forbidden. The ancient race continued their glorious existence, unaware or unwilling to acknowledge the dark fate that awaited them. They plied the stars at will, experiencing the wonders of the galaxy and immersing themselves completely in the endless sensations that it offered them. Such was the technological mastery of the Eldari that worlds were created specifically for their pleasure, and stars lived or died at their whim. On hundreds of idyllic planets seeded across the stars, they pursued their inclinations as they willed, indulging every dream and investigating every curiosity. They mastered the labyrinth dimension of the webway, expanded their realms into the furthest corners of reality, and learned much about the universe that has since been forgotten. When their spirits eventually left their mortal bodies at death, they dissolved peacefully back into the Empyrean to be reborn again, for the warp did not yet hold the danger for Eldari souls that it has since their fall. There were, of course, many wars. Even when the galaxy was young, there were upstart species seeking to gouge out petty empires of their own, and the Eldari waged wars against the sprawling Necron dynasties that ravaged dozens of star systems and cost trillions of lives. Most of these conflicts, though, were so short-lived that the ease of their victory left the Eldari ever more sure of their ascendancy. Even the greatest of all their wars, the conflict over 60 million Terran years ago that first forged their species in alliance with the legendary beings called the Old Ones, dimly remembered in the mythic cycles of the craftworlds as the war in heaven, did not humble them. In their hearts, they reigned supreme, and no other power could end their dominance. The catalyst that brought about the Eldari race's fall came from the very depths of their collective psyche. The innate need to fuel their passions and indulge in every extreme. Their people had long outgrown the need for physical labor or manual agriculture due to the highly advanced and automated nature of their technology. Their society provided all the required necessities of life without individual effort, leaving long Terran centuries for the Eldari to spend sating their every desire and whim. Fueled by an inexhaustible curiosity, many gave way to their most hedonistic impulses. Exotic cults sprang up across their domains that eclipsed the noble pursuits of old, each dedicated to esoteric knowledge or sensual excess. The core of their race began to look inwards, inexorably seeking new ways to explore the full range of emotion and sensation. Such behavior was perilously decadent and, in the end, corrosive to the soul of the race. The pursuit of excess gradually became a blight upon the whole society. The acts of the pleasure cults began to transcend those of idle curiosity or even extreme addiction. Eldari from every corner of the Empire wallowed in their most unnatural impulses in the pursuit of debauchery. As the cults gained a tighter hold over their society, they became increasingly divided. Those who saw the foulness that corrupted their people for what it was became known as the Exodites, and they departed to found colony worlds on the fringes of the Eldari Empire. As the civilization slid further into anarchy, others repented of their ways and fled into deep space aboard world ships called craftworlds. Most Eldari, however, continued to glut themselves on the pursuits of the depraved. The sorrow of those left who mourn the loss of innocence eventually turned to bitterness and spite. In time, brother fought brother, and sadistic killers stalked the shadows in search of victims for their vile lusts. No life was spared in the pursuit of pleasures, both murderous and perverse. A sickness of vice overtook their race, and blood flowed through the streets amid the bestial roar of the crowd. Their hidden realms in the webway, the network of tunnels that spread between real space and the warp, became sprawling palaces of avarice and sadism, and entire worlds were bent to the pursuit of the darkest of sensations. As the moral corruption of the Eldari race tightened its stranglehold, echoes of ecstasy and agony began to ripple through time and space. In the parallel dimension of the Imperium, the psychic reflections of these intense experiences began to coalesce, for the shifting tides of the Empyrean can take form around intense emotion. Slowly, silently, a nascent god of excess grew strong in the depths of the warp.